Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk About It, the podcast. Here we will discuss the ugly truth of healing, finding purpose, knowing your worth, and so much more. Nobody knows your journey like you, so don't be afraid to share your story. You never know who it can help. So I briefly want to share with you guys the reason why Let's Talk About It has come about. Back in 2020, God planted a seed in my mind for me to start a podcast. At that time, I thought about just speaking about the knowledge and wisdom that has been poured into my life. I feel like my generation really needs to hear things that are coming from people that have been through something and that can help us get through things in a gracious way. So at that time, it wasn't that big of a deal for me. It wasn't on my mind as heavy as it has been lately. So in 2021, I went through so much where I thought I wanted to give up. I wanted to give up on just about everything. 2021 had to be the worst year of my life. Maybe even 2022 as a runner-up, because it was tough. It was hard, and I'm going to get into all of that. I actually wanted to start this podcast when I was completely healed from what I've been through. I did not want to come on here hurt, heartbroken, anything that would direct me to the wrong audience. That was not what it was for. This podcast is for us to heal, to find purpose, to knowing our worth and actually understanding what that means. And so much more. It's so many things that I want to speak on and share just to help other young women understand that they are worth so much more than what they're settling for. So I recently had gotten confirmation that I needed to start speaking in the past month and a half or so. So that's why you hear me today. Today is actually, if you're listening to this the day it drops, it's my 27th birthday. I am super excited about what God is going to do with this podcast. And I know year 27 for me is about to be the best year of my life. So with all that being said, please join me on my first episode of me sharing my testimony on being saved by grace. In the year of 2021 was probably the hardest year of my life. I was 25 at the time. Definitely not living the way that I was supposed to be living. I know that. I definitely was not doing the things that I was supposed to be doing, especially as a Christian woman, somebody that has been chosen by God. I didn't know the importance of it. And when you're chosen, you are chosen. You cannot run from that. And again, at the time, that wasn't a big deal for me. That wasn't a priority of doing what God wanted me to do, especially in the beginning of the year. The month of March was something else. But fast forwarding to June, and before I get into that, I also wanted to let you guys know and just kind of put it out there that I was at the time in a relationship for 8 years, going on 9 at the end of that year. That has a big part in 2021. So again, going from March was definitely a month where I kind of stepped out of my, not covering from God, but my walk with God. I grew up praise dancing. I started praise dancing at 12 years old, and I always dance, and I still dance to this day. I've been dancing more than half my life, and dance has been a big thing for me. It's always kept me grounded and kept me in church, I'm going to say. Sometimes, basically, until 2021, for the most part, I used dance as a reason to go to church, if I'm being completely honest. So my relationship with God wasn't that serious to me. Again, in March, it kind of dwindled. It went downhill, and I chose to do some things that wasn't the best for me to do, but I think I definitely had to go through it to get out of what I was going through, okay? Fast forward to June. Again, like I said, I was in a relationship, and we ended up moving in together the first week, June 5th, and I remember dates. I remember some stuff vividly, and this I do. So we moved in June 5th, and the week after that, I remember getting a text saying that my grandma was in the hospital because she fell. Then the next day, we went to my parents' house. It was me, my sister, my brother, mom, and dad, and we sat on the back porch, and my dad told me that it wasn't a fall. Basically, she is in hospice care, and doctors don't know how long she has. So yeah, that broke my heart. Trying not to cry at the moment, because knowing that we're basically waiting for her to pass over was pretty hard. I'm grateful for all the times that I had with her. And my grandma, she was an amazing woman, an amazing mother, teacher, lover, like all of the things good that you can think of. That was my grandma, and losing her was so hard. She was the only grandparent that I grew up knowing, so that was really trying. It was a very trying time. So then after we're going through that process with as a family, so moved in June 5th, she passed June 20th. Mind you, I'm not living with my family, so that was tough. And when I lost her, it's like I was so numb to everything else. I was so numb to the world, to any feeling, to my relationship. I remember just sitting on the couch and just not even feeling anything, because it just was weird. Like, it was weird because she was still here, but she wasn't here. Before she passed. But then after she passed, of course, it still was hard. So yeah, after losing my grandma, I just became miserable in my relationship. I think losing my grandma opened my eyes to the spiritual part of life, you know? Because we're all going somewhere when we pass. This is not our home. And I wanted peace, and I wasn't getting peace in my relationship. So we were there since June 5th, moved out. I personally moved out July 24th. Like I said, I wanted to be at peace, and I wasn't at peace. And the only way that I can be at peace is if I was at peace with God. The relationship that I had was not fulfilling God's purpose in my life. I was no longer happy. I didn't have the same feelings anymore. I emotionally detached myself while grieving my grandmother. I prayed a lot about it before I actually did it. I didn't want to. I didn't want to leave. I was comfortable where I was at. Meaning, like, we grew up together. We got together when we were 16. We literally grew up together. He was my best friend. And it was hard to even think. And it was more so I was scared to hurt him. I didn't want to hurt him. That's what hurt me, was I knew I was going to hurt him. Like, at one point, that was my dog. Like, we was tight. That was my best friend. So I was just praying to God for a while about it. One day I was home and I was watching this sermon called The Undoing by Sarah Jakes Roberts. I recommend every single last person that is tuning into this, go watch it. She drops so many gems, and it's an amazing sermon. But the biggest thing that I took away from that was she said that God's time is eternal, so starting over means nothing to him. And I'm going to just say, you know, like when you ask God for a sign or something, and you just got to ask him, like, are you sure, God? Like, are you sure? Like, is that what it means? Or I need more clarity. And so that's exactly what I did. I was like, God, so does that mean like starting over in my relationship currently, or like starting over completely? And so then she goes to say, when you start over, you're not starting from scratch. You'll be starting from experience. Definitely, that was it. And as soon as I was done watching that, I remember I called my best friend, and I was crying and crying and crying on the phone. And I was like, I have to break up with him. And I was sad. I was hurting. I don't even have the words. I can't really remember exactly. But I just know that it was time to end it. On top of watching that sermon, as I was getting confirmation, stuff that I have actually heard over the years about my relationship in sermons and people, just seeds being planted, were coming back up. They were blooming now. I remember I was once told, my pastor was preaching a sermon, and in that he said, you might be with a good person, but they're not good for you, right? Then it was another sermon that I was at. The pastor said, being unequally yoked with your partner is unfair to your partner, because you're going to expect them to do things that they don't know how to do, or what to do, or how to say. Like, it's just not fair, because you're going to have so many expectations for them, and they're never going to meet them. It's not fair to your children, because having an unequally yoked mom and dad is not fair to them, because you hear one thing from your mom and you hear another thing from your dad, and they're confused. Like, that's not fair for them to grow up being confused about what they should believe or anything like that. And then it's not fair to you, because again, you're going to put them on this pedestal and have expectations for them, and they will never meet them. So it's just not fair in general. Then I just knew it wasn't going to happen. I've tried over and over. And I mean, I probably wasn't the best. And I'm going to get into that actually, probably in another episode, because it just came to my remembrance about just like the things that I would do to try to get him to come to church or be in church or just be a godly man, I guess. I expected him to change for me, Can I be honest? I expected that man to change. And it got to a point, right, like at that time when I was contemplating about leaving, where I'm like, Amber, it is not your responsibility to have this man become the man that you want him to be. There's already somebody out there that's going to love you the way that Christ loves the church, because he's going to know exactly how Christ loved the church. There's somebody out there that is going to not bring up the past to hurt you or lie to you or cheat on you or do anything that is going to hinder your relationship or even make you compromise your relationship with God. I'm literally like, Amber, that is not your responsibility to do anything that you feel like a man should already know. That's not your responsibility. And so with that being said, all of that came to a point where I chose to leave for me. I chose to leave for me. And I chose to leave the relationship for me and myself, not for anything else. Not because of anything else, and I'm going to get to that because whoever been following my journey, I think I know what y'all been thinking, and I'm about to clear all that up. But it got to a point where I'm like, I want peace. I want to be happy with me. I didn't realize all of this at the time. I just knew I had to go. No matter what, I had to go. It was time to leave. So after I left, there was a whole lot of stuff going on. And not to get too much into it, but it was just like I was angry at how he reacted. And I was told that I shouldn't be angry about how he reacted, because when you just uproot somebody's life, it's like they weren't expecting it, basically. So you shouldn't be mad at that, right? But I broke up and I left the relationship at the end of July. So if I fast forward to October, basically I found out throughout the entire relationship, mind you, 3 months after I already broke up with him. And when I broke up with him, I chose me. And I'm going to say that again. I chose me, not anything else. And I did not leave because of anything else. And for the 85% of people that think I left because of what I'm about to get into, that's not it. That's not it. But once I found this out, I was glad I left, okay? So when I found out in October that the love of my life had stepped out on me most of the relationship, that broke me down to millions of pieces. That hurt so bad that I don't even have the words, because I'm thinking of how I was at that time, and I was just so hurt. That's all I can really. I was so hurt to my core, because this is the man that I wanted to stay with for the rest of my life, the one I wanted to have kids with, the one I had a future in our minds with. I had whole life attached to this man. Like, he was everywhere that I thought and looked and stuff. He was there with me of what I wanted. That's what I wanted, but that's not what God wanted for me. God got me out of that relationship gracefully. And when I say I'm saved by grace, I have been saved by the grace of God. And when I say that, it's like I didn't come out of the relationship with any illnesses from him stepping out. I didn't come out of the relationship with any kids or a marriage or anything that has me tied to him. I was able to get out of that relationship gracefully. After that healing journey that I'm going to get into on the next episode, it was so hard. When I tell you I was depressed, and it took me until now, January 2023, I can tell y'all that I am like 95% healed. I can think of situations and not get mad. I can talk about it and not want to bring up things to make him look bad. I'm in a place of peace and healing. I am so excited for this year. I'm excited for this podcast because I just know how much this is needed. And it's not because of me, but because of God. And this podcast is not going to be led by me. I'm going to allow God to do what he does, to be able to share my testimony and to help other young women that were just like me. The women that were young, that got in a relationship young and had no idea what they were getting themselves into. Overall, this podcast can be for anybody. And I just pray that this reaches the people that it's supposed to reach. And I also want you guys to share it to others who you think will definitely need to hear from a peer that has been through heartbreak and got through it by the grace of God. So at the end of every episode, I'm going to read either a post, a quote, a scripture, a poem, or something either that I wrote or that I've seen throughout the process of my healing and life in general. So today what I'm actually going to do is read this letter that I wrote to myself back in December of 2022. To the young girl who trusted without question, I'm sorry that you had to face unimaginable pain. I'm sorry that you had so many lonely nights filled with tears. I'm sorry that you couldn't see how much you were worth. To the young adult who loved so hard but ended up with her heart in millions of pieces, promise me you won't give up on love, the love that you know that is out there. You have a heart of gold. Don't let this world turn it cold. To the woman that is healing, continue to show yourself grace and to the people around you. Continue to light up every room that you walk in. Continue to evolve. You are everything and then some. Stay gracious, stay humble, and be open to love. You're amazing, and I hope you know that.